Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday, and more importantly, it's group stage day here at Super Regionals, day 3. We've already got a couple teams punch their tickets to HRX, but now's the time where 6 teams go up against one another one time each, and we see who comes up on top. I'm your host, Aggro, joined by Taco, and one team that punched their ticket to HRX, Alpha Jackal, the coach for Team Rival. Guys, this is as exciting as it gets.
I can't actually wait for this to get started. There's so many different outcomes that could potentially happen. Noble, as a dark horse, could have some upsets. Dignitas down here, very few people predicted that. NRG down here as well. There's potential. NRG don't make worlds, and that's scary.
It's absolutely insane. And before we get into it, we got a couple exciting things to share with you guys at home that you get to experience on your own. Taco, these games are just so you have no idea what's going to happen. I mean, in one game set, there's no predicting what can really happen.
Obviously, there's always going to be the predicted favorites, but of course, you really do never know what can actually happen, considering just how much talent is actually surrounding all of these teams.
Well, Sennheiser has been great to us, and they might be able to be great to you as well. You can go to their website and enter their giveaway. You can win a headset, a digital loot pack, and 800 gems. Plus, if you don't want to risk it, you can always just use code hi-rez for 10% off. That's then we also have Super Regional sale. We've got a couple of really cool skins off here, 25% off. Taco, I know you're not about to tell me what skins are on the screen.
No, there's actually just select esports content and a Scylla on the right.
Okay, so thank you, Taco. That's all I need from you. As I mentioned already, a couple teams have already punched their tickets to HRX. They're in, but you have to go as well. You can save 25% when you use code SPL25. In order to grab your tickets. See, you know Barracuda's going to be there now, and that's the only reason anyone comes to HRX is to see Barracuda, right, Alpha Jackal?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to come anyway, but to see him actually play is something special that you just have to experience.
It's always a lot of fun to sit in the crowd and watch. Luminosity, always one of the teams that the crowd really gets going for. Let's take a look at the other teams that you can expect to see play at HRX. They played Wednesday and Thursday. It was NA on Wednesday. Luminosity, as I mentioned, beat Space Station Gaming in a really awesome best-of-5 set. Trifecta fell to E-United 3-0. And then yesterday, some surprises. Obey, not a surprise to move on necessarily, but that set was particularly close.
I don't think anybody was, or I would say the majority of people probably weren't expecting as much of a fight from Elevate as what we were able to witness yesterday. I think that Elevate really did their homework coming into this event, and when it comes to these group stages now, I'm actually incredibly excited to see them play.
I mean, I expected the fight coming out from Elevate. Don't forget, we screamed both Obey and Elevate going into it, so we had some background knowledge of both teams. I don't know why they switched up their draft style going into Game 4 and 5, though, putting Death Panther onto mages rather than onto hunters, which proved so successful for them.
In Alpha, you guys, for Rival, I mean, I think some people thought that you would have a good set against Dignitas, but I'm not sure how many people predicted a 3-0 in your favor. What allowed you to do so well in that set?
I think we just came a bit more prepared than Team Dignitas. Going into Game 1, they just allowed us to have every single pick that we wanted. The Fafnir, the Osiris, and the Odin. Okay, we'll just take a free win these. Thank you. Goodbye.
Well, Rival, they qualify and force Dignitas down into playing today and tomorrow. Let's take a look at the schedule and see what you can expect for these group stage games. We started off with the 2 wildcard teams, NRG versus Noble, and then match 2 right away. We get to see Dig versus NRG. And look, every single one of these matchups, you go, man, that's a good game. And then the next game's a good game. That's the whole point. These are the Super Regionals teams that have done really well in order to get here.
That's probably my favorite part about the schedule is that you can expect who's going to be playing who next, but you can't expect the outcomes whatsoever. All of these teams have really just been striving to try and make it into those final world slots. And with only 2 of them on the line now, things are getting pretty tight.
I mean, I'm looking forward to match 4, Space Station versus Elevate. I think the 2 teams having very distinct playstyles coming together as a clash will be very interesting to watch, but we have to talk about match 1, don't we?
We sure do. I mean, I hope you guys have your have called off of work. They just made sure that you've got no obligations for today or tomorrow because you're not going to want to miss a single match. First match up for us here is Noble versus NRG, as we mentioned, the 2 wildcard teams, and this is actually the first time we get to see NRG here at Super Regionals. How do you expect they're going to come out of the gate?
My huge thing here in match number 1 for Noble vs. NRG is this is an incredibly important set for NRG. It's going to be their first game. And the thing is that NRG is kind of notorious for losing to the teams that they shouldn't. Everybody's been looking at Noble coming into the group stages as kind of a blow-off team. And I think that's where Noble really has a primary advantage in comparison to these other guys because no one's going to really expect a whole lot from Noble. So when they pull out the crazy strategies and all the sort of jank that we know that Noble is capable of, it could really catch a team like NRG, who seems a bit more clockwork than Noble, to really get caught like off guard.
I was just still expecting, though, that the natural talent coming out from NRG will be enough to overpower Noble, even if they get caught out by a surprise draft.
NRG have just had so much success at LAN. I mean, we've talked a lot about player stats and all that kind of stuff for everyone here at LAN, and it's just unfair when you look at what NRG has done in offline play during their careers. All of their win percentages are just through the roof. Every single player above 72%, which is no one else is even close to 70, really. I mean, we're talking like Barracuda's at 60-something win percentage. That's insane how big of a difference the NRG statistics are compared to everybody else. This is the new guy on the squad, maniaKK. His stats a little bit worse because he hasn't been on a 2-time world defending team. Alpha, how do you feel like he has assimilated into this NRG roster?
I think he provides a similar job to Dimmy, but not exactly the same, like a carbon copy. I think he plays a bit more aggressive and has a slightly different god pool to that of Dimmy, but he has meshed incredibly well with the team, has done his job incredibly effectively. It's just taken them a bit of time to get used to that new play style coming out of the solo lane.
Do you think that's part of the reason why Adapting hasn't looked like himself during this fall split?
Absolutely. I think maniaKK's just played it slightly differently. Adapting is still getting used to that, and we saw towards the end of the season that he was almost back to his best. Really did falter a tiny bit against us in that final set, but he's still playing lights out, I feel.
There's always the consideration whenever you bring in a member like maniaKK, you know that he's going to have a lot of mechanical skill coming into the roster, but it's not necessarily going to be that easy mold finish to the playstyle that NRG has become so accustomed to with Dimmy all these years. Dimmy was used to taking the losing matchup and then coming into the team fights and performing spectacularly. With maniaKK, it seems as though they're trying to shift orient a little bit more emphasis onto that solo lane, get the pressure for maniaKK early on, or more especially, maniaKK just looks to establish it himself.
This is the time to see if Adapting has returned to form, because you look at his stats over his career at LAN, and it's just staggering. I mean, he's got the most kills by more than 100. He's got 524 kills at LAN. No one else is even in the 400 range. He's got the highest KDA. He's the highest in kills per game. He's the highest in gold per minute, and none of those are even close. So if NRG are going to return to their world championship form, Adapting's going to have to be a big part of it.
I mean, but then there comes the risk of, if Adapting gets shut down, who steps up? Who becomes that focal point carry? And they have players like Yammyn and emilitoo, but as you said, Adapting stats are just so much better than those.
And iRaffer's stats are also pretty impressive in the support role. I mean, he's got the most assists at LAN, almost 1,000, needs about 40 plus in order to get to that 1,000 mark. The next highest has less than 800, and that's Trickstank. He's about 780 or so. And iRaffer's averaging over 12 assists per game. No one else is even at 11 assists per game. So the stats really tell the story of how dominant this team has been on LAN. Their online phase, not what they wanted, but this is their time to try and turn it around. As for Noble, on the other side, not a lot of LAN experience for many of these players. Skeeledon, their jungler, has the most, and still not too many games for him at LAN, just over 20 for him.
And for Noble as well, you have the considerations that there's members like Skeeledon, there's members like Whalrus, and they've got a little bit of experience underneath their belt, but it's nowhere near the extent of NRG's. Still, they've gotten a lot of practice, and they've had a lot of time to also kind of absorb everything they've been watching over these past matches already.
Alpha, what stands out to you about this Noble roster whenever you watch them?
I think it's just the ability that they have to team fight and split the team fight up. We saw that in their final set. They managed to pick Darji, and they split up the team fight massively to allow that Darji pick to work. But by splitting the team fight and allowing Skeeledon to go super deep, it also comes to their greatest weakness, where he overextends himself. If NRG can capitalize off that, it could be their own downfall for Noble.
Skeeledon has been a great addition to this roster. A lot of his LAN experience comes from his impressive run with Oxygen Supremacy at the Spring Gauntlet LAN. I had a chance to sit down and talk with Skeeledon earlier this week. Let's take a look.
When we got relegated out of SPL, I don't remember who took our spot, but it was pretty much just, I was in college and I'm just like, I need the money somehow. So like I skimmed by, and right after we got into relegations again, we didn't make it. That was like the decision. It's like, can I keep playing this? And luckily, Noble actually ended up picking me up, so I got to continue playing it. I really didn't have an off switch, where if I died like 3 times, it's like I just kept going in like I had a lead. Now like kind of registered, it's like there's different ways you have to play the game. If you have a lead, you push it. If you don't, then you try to take what you get and then like punish them. And I think that's actually what led me to be a little more consistent this season, was really applying those lessons instead of just trying to like make something changes. I do W key a lot, don't get me wrong. Like I do love playing aggressive, but it's, I want to say actually pretty calculated. It's like if I see an enemy going to the speed buff and I know like they're looking to defend it, you can go gold. I like taking advantage of what the enemy does when they think it's correct, because them changing their playstyle will also affect them in the future. So I would say the people that actually tilt on our team the most would be me and Wubbn, and Moswal is just such a positive influence in that sense. Like, I don't think he's ever said a negative word in comms, where it's just like, it's hard to be tilted or angry or anything around him. It's just like, and that just makes playing in the team environment so much easier, and just you want to show up and you want to do best. When I first joined, it was mostly just like I would issue orders, they would just follow them around, but they've like came into their own really. Mozzie started talking a lot more. Like our 3v3's become pretty solid, I think. When we do a gold figure, it's like everyone tosses out ideas and then like we'll talk it over, and it's just like they've actually spent a lot of time helping me like grow into being a shot caller. We have nothing to lose but everything to gain.
Alpha, how important is it to have your jungler be a strong voice for your team? They don't have to necessarily be the primary shot caller, but it can be helpful when they are.
I mean, the jungler is the roamer of the team. They're the one influencing the entire map. And if they're being quiet, where's the game plan coming from? Where's the potential for invades, to take objectives, to take kills? If your jungler is quiet, that's a massive hindrance to your team.
In Moswal, you heard Skeeledon start to talk about him. And his addition to this team, Taco, has been a real key factor for them in turning around their season and ending up here at Super Regionals. What do you think Moswal has brought to Noble?
I think that Moswal has not only brought a very strong consistency factor whenever it comes to positive comms, but also just the fact that he is very strong gameplay individually as well. And I think that even though we haven't really seen a huge flex out of his god pool, that it's definitely there. He's commonly talked about amongst NA players as a very individually talented guy, so I could certainly see him being able to work that in with the rest of the team, and I'm actually really excited to see him here today, because last time he was here, it wasn't as a main player, he was the sub. 3
words from me, he's brought Thoth.
His Thoth has been phenomenal during his time with Noble, there's no doubt about it, though. That pick didn't necessarily work out earlier in Super Regionals, as Alpha Jackal, I'm sure, is very happy about, because it was Zeros playing quite a bit of it. Moswal having no LAN experience as a player, how big of a deal can that be? I
mean, as we saw with our team back at the Gauntlet LAN at Spring, it can affect the first few games, but once you got into it, once you're starting to play, starting to communicate with your team once again, it really just doesn't matter. You start to get used to it, you start to get comfortable with it, and I'm sure Moswal will do exactly the same.
Love these stats that we have up on screen right now. What a difference from Season 3 to Season 4. And Moswal was there for a lot of Season 3 with this Noble roster, and then was benched for Aduro right before a LAN, like literally right before a LAN for Noble, and never got a chance to really show what he had on the offline stage.
Well, one of the more important factors I think that Skeeledon brought up in his video is he was mentioning Moswal is such a positive influence in our comms. One of the primary issues he had with Noble previously is they said that he just didn't talk enough. He wasn't making enough calls. He wasn't being the shot caller that you sometimes need your mid to be. And now, after that experience of getting benched, Moswal is really here to try and show to the rest of the squad that he can perform the same way.
I'm just a big advocate of everyone on the team has to talk about your cooldowns, talk about your damage output, talk about any form of initiation you can have, and that's what we do. Everybody is talking, everybody is saying what a potential plan could be. There's no one shot caller, it's everyone doing the same job.
You kind of alluded to it, Taco, that Moswal hasn't had a lot of different gods show up in his god pool during his time back in the SPL. Do you think that's something that other teams are going to look to kind of exploit to see what he has in that god pool remaining?
I think that it wouldn't surprise me to see NRG maybe try and take advantage of that factor, but they could also perhaps work against themselves in that way, because Moswal really can play just about anything in that mid lane role. It all depends on what exactly Noble is trying to orient their draft around.
I'm expecting that some of the EU teams might not elect to ban Thoth against Noble, but the NA teams 100% will look to take that away from Moswal.
We'll have to wait and see what NRG want to do, and we're ready for picks and bans on this Friday, the first of our group stage games, ready to get started. NRG in that first pick position. You don't think that they're going to ban away Moswal's Thoth, but NRG has really gone for pretty consistent picks during this fall split of Season 4. Haven't been too many deviations from what they really like to play.
And that's one of the strengths and weaknesses of NRG. They have so much practice on those compositions that they know the limits of them. They know how deep they can go, how much damage output they are able to do, what times to go for the objectives. But then it also gives teams a chance to practice against them. It also gives teams a chance to come up with different strategies to beat that composition. So if Noble have done their research, NRG could be their own worst enemy in the draft.
That guy on your screen is one we didn't really get a chance to talk about during the pregame show. Whalrus, the solo laner for Noble, once thought of as a real rising star in the solo lane in North America, has kind of tapered off a little bit, but still has potential to have a breakout game.
I think the main thing here for Whalrus is that Noble is probably going to base a lot of their draft around him and Skeeledon. Noble have commonly stated that if Whalrus and Skeely are on point, then usually we win our game. So it'd be very easy for them to just look for that early pressure composition, and not to mention that would get them off on their best foot against a team like NRG.
Ratatoskr and Amuz and Cobb, the first two bans here for each team. Ratatoskr is a god that we've seen plenty of during Super Regionals already, but usually not one banned away. Why do you think NRG go for the first ban of Rat?
Simple, they just think Skeeledon is probably the most experienced and best player on Noble, and one that they have to look out for. And I tend to agree. He's been one of the momentum players for Noble, really dictating the pace of the game.
RTO, the other ban for NRG, trying to take that away from either Wubbn in the support role or Whalrus over there in that solo lane. Yi, the other ban for Noble. So a couple Hunter bans looking at emilitoo, the reigning MVP, the World Championships. That leaves open Chulainn, almost certainly for maniaKK in that solo lane.
There's always the response possibility, though, of the Osiris. We've been seeing a lot of Osiris bans throughout Super Regionals so far, and granted, those were with some of the other teams, but that is definitely something that is in Whalrus's god pool, and I've seen numerous occasions where Whalrus has single-handedly carried his team and kept them alive in games from playing Osiris.
As much as I would like to see adapting on an assassin, we could see the Chulainn be in the jungle and an Osiris, well, I was about to say Osiris in the solo lane, but cast his curse, I think.
Serqet, the pick for Skeeledon, so even with a Ratatoskr ban focused his way, trying to keep that away from adapting one of his signature gods. I kind of agree, though, with where I think you were going, Alpha Jackal, and that's that Noble could have potentially waited on the Osiris pick, knowing that Chulainn is likely in the solo lane, and even if it isn't, you're forcing adapting onto a non-assassin, which is really against his playstyle.
I mean, we've seen him play Camazotz and Thor to high standards. Camazotz has fallen off a bit recently, so I don't expect him to go back to that. I want to see him on Thor. I really do.
Is there any way we see adapting pick Camazotz this entire LAN? With how much backlash there has been about that pick specifically for him?
If he does, he has to have practiced it a bit more, I feel. He has to have come up with some different way of playing it.
Soul and Fafnir, the two picks for NRG, getting iRaffer, one of his premier gods. That Soul likely for the mid lane Yammyn, but could also be flexed over to emilitoo in that duo lane. Fafnir proving to be one of the strongest picks for any team so far this LAN.
Fafnir and Soul were both excellent choices by NRG because Noble, Moswal loves playing Soul, and on top of that, Wubbn loves playing Fafnir, so they're indirectly taking these picks away from Noble as well as just benefiting themselves pretty greatly.
What are you looking for if you're on Noble here, Alpha Jackal? Do you want some more pressure in the early game with your two picks that do well in the early game already?
Definitely. I'm looking at potentially the mid pick. I was thinking the Thoth, I was also thinking the Raijin, but it's Moswal, so it's going to have to be the Thoth. If they didn't pick it here, there's a potential NRG ban in a way.
So there's a lot of discussion whether or not a pick like this is you pick a late game god in the mid lane with two early game gods in the right-hand side of the map in order to carry the mid game god into those later stages. But is it kind of just working against what you've already drafted with the pressure early on to pick such a low pressure mid?
I don't think it does, but I'm concerned for the level 1 for Noble. Serqet and Osiris famously don't have great level 1s. Level 2 and 3 is where they really start to shine.
Yeah.
So if NRG do get that initial push and start invading on the buffs right away, Noble are in trouble.
Well, one thing that I was also really curious about coming into these matches for the group stages is we've been seeing a lot of different starts between the teams from NA and EU, and a lot of the players here have also just really been talking about how they're not going to be starting the same standard ways that we've been getting used to seeing. And so I'm wondering if Noble have something a little bit different, like slide up their sleeve.
Could be. Susano and Sylvanas, the two bands, still trying to focus out adapting a little bit. And even with the lack of success recently for adapting on Camazotz, Noble decide they want to ban it away. NRG has one more ban left. They could look to continue to focus out Wubbn. Wowy still has his whole god pool available. A lot of Jing Wei for Wowy during the split. His Cupid very famous, but Cupid not really the best of matchups into what NRG have already.
No, the delayed damage coming out from the Fields of Love and the Heart Bomb really wouldn't work too well against the Soul. Would do well against the Fafnir. And a Bacchus ban, I like this Bacchus ban, because Fafnir has to stand still to transform and then transform back into a Dwarf. And if Bacchus is just around the corner, that's a guaranteed knock-up, guaranteed death near enough.
Ram the selection here for Wowy. It's going to be a quick Ullr selection for emilitoo. That's one of his go-to picks as of late, and Ullr's just kind of seen a resurgence lately, Taco.
Didn't really get a chance to say it, but I think everybody kind of knew it was coming for Emil. It's just such a strong level 1, especially against the Ram, who also has a particularly strong level 1 because of the Astral Arrow stacks. You can full clear the wave, but with an Ullr Fafnir lane, they shouldn't have any issues establishing a little bit more dominance in the duo lane.
This is a statement pick here from NRG. This is, we are here to play, we are here to mechanically beat you in every single role, and adapting Thor, I asked for it, and I get it.
Love the Thor selection. Anytime that adapting gets to play Thor, I'm going to be excited, and certainly am already for NRG's draft. Noble looking for their support more than likely. Wubbn is the guy there that needs to try and be the initiator with how a Noble's comp is looking thus far.
Ganesh is something that kind of just comes to mind automatically because I know we've been seeing a ton of Ganesh gameplay from Wubbn, although that would bring in a little bit of concern in that Noble's lacking some hard CC right now when it comes to setting up that Thoth.
100% I would like to see a Geb pick here. Gives good initiation, good protection to the backline, if considering that NRG have long-range initiation from the Thor, and it's just an all-round solid pick from the support role.
And that's one of the picks that Wubbn has seen the most success with during his time in the SPL, though, as you mentioned, Taco, has been a lot of Ganesh, and Ganesh has a good matchup up against Thor, can stop a lot of the damage coming out and his escape. Also decent against Fafnir because you can silence out right after that transformation and make sure that he can't jump away. But you're right, that would lack some hard CC. You're really relying at that point on the poke damage from Moswal and Whalrus in the solo lane, and then the blink initiations from Serqet, which are pretty unreliable come late game.
Noble are already relying pretty heavily on top-tier execution. They can't really be affording to miss anything with the draft that they've already gone for because the Serqet-Thoth combination is one that is kind of finicky at times. If you're a little bit too early on launching that final judgment, you're going to miss the toss off the Cobra's Kiss.
It is the Ganesh in the support role here for Wubbn. Not the Geb that you would have liked here, Alpha Jackal, but do you think that Noble's composition can work together?
I think it can work together. It's extremely high execution. We talked about it with a lot of skill shots available to them. Their stun coming out from Thoth, the dash from Ganesh as their initiation. Really is down to, can they hit their abilities from long range? Can they catch energy off guard? And to be honest, I don't see that happening.
This feels like a counter initiation composition. Noble's lacking initiation so hard that they kind of want NRG to do it for them and try and take the fight afterwards. But I don't know, giving NRG the first strike, if you will, is kind of making me nervous.
It might sound a little bit crazy here, though, but I feel as though Noble got everything that they would have wanted. When you look at these players individually, you might not necessarily expect it from Wowy, but Ram is one of his favorite picks to go for. Same thing for Wubbn on the Ganesh. Skeeledon loves Serqet. Whalrus loves Osiris. And Moswal, I mean, we've all seen his Thoth.
And NRG have famously overextended in team fights when they see a low health target, and that's one of the reasons why we've seen adapting die a lot more this split and previous splits, because he's just been baited in by that low health target, trying to get that kill, trying to make sure that he gets a trade-off at the very least. And with a counter-initiation comp, it's a lot easier to pull that off.
Well, plenty of mobility for Noble to try and get away when low HP. Can't really say the same for NRG. They've got decent mobility, but the long-range damage for Noble is really strong between the Thoth and the Ram snipes.
I think the primary concern here for NRG as well is if they can't close this game out early or find the lead early on. After the mid-game ends, Noble's draft really starts to come into play and get online. You don't want to allow that Ram, Thoth, and the Serqet to hit the late-game stride, because I do feel, even with NRG being so individually skilled, there's only so much you can do against a draft that is just pretty superior in the late game.
And there's two things which I'm looking at this draft in terms of objectives. There's objective burst, which goes to Noble, and then there's objective DPS, which goes the way of NRG thanks to the Fafnir, Sol, and Ullr. So if NRG get on the objective first and are able to zone out well, they should have the better end of the objectives. But if Noble are allowed to creep in, allowed to start up that objective themselves, it should be Noble's 100%.
What about the hardest part of the game for a lot of teams here apparently during this Super Regionals? Sieging has been a real problem for numerous teams. Whose composition does better when sieging down something like a Phoenix?
I would probably have to favor NRG for sieging the Phoenixes just because they have enough frontline between the Fafnir and the Chulainn, plus the Coers should really benefit that Sol and Ullr.
And to the same point, I think Noble have a better defensive comp for those Phoenix sieges. Being able to poke out from long range without having that base healing so far away for NRG if they're pushing up on Noble's Phoenixes, it's going to be difficult to handle that Thoth when it gets to that late game.
Why do you think that so many teams have struggled with Phoenix sieges so far, Alpha?
I just think that, especially in the game 2 yesterday, we've seen teams engage or not engage at the wrong times. There was a couple instances against Dignitas where they should have engaged on those 5 versus 3. They didn't, and we were just allowed to poke them out for free and then look for that engage ourselves. They just need to throw caution to the wind and just go for it at times.
You heard Skeeledon in his video say that they've got nothing to lose here and everything to gain. I mean, no one expects Noble to come out of these wildcard groups and find their way to HRX. How kind of uplifting can that be, Taco, to not have any pressure?
For Noble, it's a matter of fact that if they're able to find the win here, not only is that going to be a huge momentum boost for the team, even though they might have to wait a little bit for their next match, it's just going to be such an uplifting sensation for them because legit everybody, I think, has pretty much written off Noble as, yeah, they made it here somehow, but nobody really cares about what they're going to do.
It's David versus Goliath. It's Noble versus NRG. We've seen the drafts. Who you guys got?
I've got NRG.
I'm just going to give it to Noble because I love Moswal way too much.
Wow, there you go. Taco's got Noble 100% for no reason whatsoever. Thank you guys for joining us. It's time for the casters to take it away. It's Finch and it's Tolly. Let's do it.
Thank you, Aggro. It is Finch. It is Tolly here to bring you the first set of our group stages. NRG going up against Noble.
Noble, like we saw on the desk there, just not really expected to win here. And this is the first international matchup. The clash of the metas that you were talking about behind the scenes here. And it's going to be, I think, important for me personally to see how Noble just come out swinging.
And Noble have a good chance to do that. Taco talked about it on the desk. They've got a lot of the picks that they're comfortable here with. Tolly Moswal's on Thoth. We got Skeeledon on Serqet, who can be high impact. I feel like we're going to have to look to see how well they can execute these picks.
It seems that Noble got everything they wanted to, honestly. The way they normally drafted in picks and bans was going for Wubbn's pick in the support role primarily, but this time around, they wanted to get the comfortable jungle and solo synergy. Now, Serqet and Osiris have some good boxing potential, but against a Thor and Chulainn, it's not the greatest idea to go against them, and that's why NRG are playing so far up, both in solo and mid.
That's right. Yammyn and emilitoo are going to have no problem getting the pressure up against Moswal alone in the mid lane. They're going to trust iRaffer over here to defend up against Wowy and Wubbn. But look, Adapting already taking more damage than I think he wanted to, totally down to half health.
Skeeledon was able to get all 3 hits off with the zigzag dash, and that's why it's so low is the health of Adapting. Forced to prematurely use the health potion. Still sitting at level 1. You don't get to level 2 off of dual splitting just the first wave. It's very important to get this next little ogre minions at the blue buff.
Wowy and Wubbn have no problem stealing away the red buff in response to the aggression from Yammyn and Adapting there in the mid lane when they were going to invade. So we can see again, where they're choosing to put that pressure. iRaffer even walking over a little bit to try and slow them down at the purple buff, so no one's picked that one up just yet.
A little bit of zoning in the solo lane as they were trying to attempt to steal away the blue buff, but instead going to get the blue buff of their own. And these 2 MVPs between Season 2 and 3 respectively grouped up in the mid lane, and for good reason, honestly, because a lot of these physical and magical hunters have the strongest early game push clear. They're able to just group up together, out-clear Moswal in the mid, who's just now about to hit level 3, and start making these rotations around the elementals. And considering they spawn about every minute and 40 seconds, if you consistently get that before the 10-minute mark, then you're going to get your team a nice little boost of gold.
And that's what they're going to do. In fact, we're getting a bit of a grouping over here as Yammyn and emilitoo stuck around after picking up those elementals. Instead, just heading back to mid is emilitoo to join Yammyn, where we also see we also see Moswal's already hanging out there with Skeeledon. So this start that they've gone with, it's going to mean that Adapting and maniaKK are probably going to get 5 a little bit later, but at least Yammyn and emilitoo will first. But Moswal's real low.
Oh, but
emilitoo falls first.
He falls first. That's so important there for Noble to strike first blood, not allowing NRG that extra boost of gold. Great trade, though, mid for Hunter. emilitoo playing the Ullr is very important to get off to a good start. You're trying to get your Transcendence online, potentially, any sort of stacking item, and really control that mid game.
And that's what happened. emilitoo now, he did also get a kill, so he's not going to be too far behind. Moswal falls, but only gets the assist credit. So that means that there could be a little bit of a chance for maybe Yammyn to start trying to work on a small lead there in mid, but emilitoo going to need to make sure he makes up for that death.
Adapting still sitting around that solo lane side. Both Speed and Blue have been stripped away from both sides, not able to really find the invade quite yet. In about a minute and a half to 2 minutes worth of time, that's when the blue buff's going to respond from Noble, and maybe that's why Adapting's sitting in this lane for so long. He wants to make sure that maniaKK is going to have the nice, comfortable lead back before Whalrus, maybe getting boots 3, and then look for that power spike play.
And I was a little concerned, you know, that over there in that duel lane, maniaKK Adapting wouldn't tick over to 5 first, but they did. They've been zoning Whalrus so effectively. So now they have some of their biggest impact ultimates, in particular, Adapting on the semi-global Thor ultimate, the Anvil of Dawn. He can start dictating the pace, but it's Yammyn who's in trouble in the mid. It's Yammyn who's gone in the mid. Skeeledon gets the second kill for Noble.
Moswal just doing a great job, not overcommitting with the dash. He did a little sneaky dash by going against the wall, which didn't allow him to go to the mid lane, but that little bit of a mini dash doesn't reveal the hand of Noble. That allows Skeeledon to engage first and get this easy kill. There wasn't even enough time for Yammyn to go into disapparate before the damage.
And that means now Skeeledon can come over and try and take away this red buff from emilitoo, further pushing him a little bit behind. In return, though, NRG taking the speed buff once again from them over here on the jungle solo side of the map.
NRG just committing to their strategy of shutting out Whalrus. He's been known to kind of go off every now and then. He's a little bit of a wild card for Noble. He can easily find some solo kills if given the opportunity, and that's why NRG are sitting in this lane a little bit, and obviously Adapting, always wanting to get a speed buff.
And emilitoo, unafraid to kind of stick around there and try and contest them while they invaded that purple buff. He did have iRaffer and Yammyn waiting for him in the wings, so they were there to back him up if need be, as Adapting just kind of cleans up that mid lane for Yammyn after the rotation.
And this is important for Moswal to get such a huge lead over Yammyn simply because of the build choice differences. Whalrus, though, caught 1v2.
He is getting knocked up. Adapting actually goes up into the air. Looks like he might be wanting to go in a little bit further. They do force the sprint out of Whalrus, who's very low on mana, and Adapting does crash in, doesn't actually land on him, but he is able to spin.
He's trying to go for the spin. He's going to teleport out while maniaKK cleans up, juggling the tower aggro. maniaKK and Adapting playing so well off of each other, and very important that Adapting, when he did miss his ultimate, he didn't get the tower aggro, so that actually helps him out because he walks a little bit closer to get the guaranteed spin and win.
And that's in response to Skeeledon showing pressure over here on the dual lane side of the map. They've been invading the red buff, trying to slow down emilitoo, so Adapting and maniaKK are like, well, we have all day to try and get this kill on the Whalrus.
And Whalrus slightly messed up there by using the last bit of his mana for that Spirit Flail on the minions there before the dunk even happened. Had he had that, maybe he gets off a tether, maybe he uses that Spirit Flail to slow Adapting and speed up himself, walking away from the Berserker barrage.
And in the end, Whalrus does take a spill, and that's what we were talking about. Now that Adapting is ticked over, he's level 7 now, has that ultimate, he can start having a little bit of pressure to further slow down Whalrus. As long as emilitoo can stay close, this can work out for NRG, but it's the same flip. As long as Whalrus doesn't lose too much, then Noble will be in a good spot as Skeely continues to fight over elementals.
Didn't want to give that up, but their elementals are just so valuable, and with Adapting getting the speed buff from Noble earlier on, he still has his own taboo. Now it's maniaKK caught in a little bit of a 1v2, able to just jump away at the right time, and I'm expecting more pressure here in the solo lane from NRG.
In fact, we're talking about how emilitoo's having pressure over there, but he's still a little bit actually ahead of Wowy because he's been able to get that farm alone. Wowy and Wubbn were splitting it for a while over here in that dual lane.
Which doesn't surprise me considering how long these two players have been teammates from Season 3. Adapting caught in a 1v1, forces to ulti away. Will survive the Serqet last breath there, just barely able to go back to base. We'll actually get the back harpies right before backing, maximizing his farm. But yeah, we were talking about Wubbn and Wowy, how long they've been playing together, and that doesn't surprise me that they start the lane together.
Not at all. Over there in that solo jungle side, we did see it was ult for ult trade, so Skeely and adapting going to be a little bit less impactful just for the moment. Skeeledon might be able to do a little bit more without his, as maniaKK actually commits the ult to knock up Whalrus, and emilitoo finally gets to see his own red.
As a Chulainn in the solo lane, you're basically a big bully. It's very difficult to bully out an Osiris, but with how much pressure adapting's been leaning in the right side of the map, it's very easy for maniaKK to get off this damage, and he's actually going to transform here. He's going to go on to Skeeledon. Nice little bleed, but it doesn't matter. maniaKK with a nice kill.
maniaKK able to clean up Skeeledon with no real backup. Skeely was pretty low, though, so it's not as if it was a full 1v2, but he cleans that up, takes away the speed, and now they're moving away.
Oh, no, Moswal having no mana either, and I think that was the reason why Whalrus didn't help out Skeeledon, is because he didn't have mana to really assist in that impact. Sure. NRG have been just consistently hitting Noble where it hurts at the speed buff.
And they were a little bit faster on that rotation, too. If he needed help adapting and some more help was rotating over, so really it would have been dangerous for Moswal to walk in. In the end, they end up dropping Skeeledon now. That was his first death. He was actually doing really well, sitting at 2-0-0, so slowing down that farm was a big deal for NRG.
And it's even being able to bully out adapting from earlier on. This allows NRG now to control the pace of the game. Skeeledon is not one that's afraid of making plays, but NRG are just kind of outgrouped.
Skeeledon jumps into multiple members. That does get the ultimate to come out from Yammyn, but up into the air goes Thor as well. Adapting looking to dunk down, but hasn't found a target just yet. Actually comes back into safety and wants to make sure he gets his own speed.
Right as I said that, Skeeledon's not afraid to engage. He jumps into 3 people, baiting out cooldowns, uses the bead so that he can zigzag away into safety, baits out a little bit of cooldowns between the Thor ultimate, but nothing that Noble can really take advantage of.
That's true. He trades his own beads, but that's 2 big impact ultimates for NRG they don't have. The question is, though, like you were saying, is there anything they can do for it? No big buffs are coming up. The only thing available right now would be the Gold Fury if they felt brave enough to go for that. So they really can't capitalize.
Well, it's NRG capitalizing on Whalrus sitting less than half health at level 9. Does have fully stacked passive up, so will mitigate some damage, but it's very important now for adapting to sit in the jungle, prevent these rotations while maniaKK solos this tower pre-10 minutes.
Yeah, this is an early tower, and now maniaKK is going to be free to rotate into these teamfights a little bit more, and he's already the highest farmed in the game at level 11. Not too surprising for a solo laner, but you do not want a big, bulky Chulainn charging at you in that rage form.
And more importantly was the timing of this aggression, also being able to take advantage of Whalrus not having defensive items quite yet. Gladiator Shield hasn't been completed, so he doesn't have the luxury of sustaining from hitting those abilities, getting about that 2.5% health return.
And it's actually a pretty significant power difference we're going to be seeing between maniaKK and Whalrus, or rather like a difference in their impact. He's got that full Gladiator Shield and started working in that defensive tree as well. So now if they have a team fight, he's going to be that much tankier, even sustaining way more than Whalrus.
Moswal barely taking any damage from the double tap of adapting. I'm pretty sure he's maxing out that Berserker Barrage instead. And also, if you take a look at the build from Moswal, I was going to touch upon it a little bit earlier on until there was action. The solo lane was his build going for the Warlock Sash, trying to build more resilient, expecting adapting to really dive the backline.
And now the grouping up is around the speed buff this time as maniaKK commits the ult onto Whalrus. They want to have they want to continue on this pressure that they have on the speed buff. Skeeledon takes a lot of poke there between adapting and Yammyn. He's going to have to back off and won't be able to be a part of this fight.
NRG are just always so calculating around enemies respawning speed buffs. Now Skeeledon, he's just going to die completely to iRaffer.
And that's based off the poke that they were able to establish earlier. Wubbn now has to back up. No way for him to come in and try and defend. NRG once again find a pick.
They do find the pick. They don't necessarily steal away the speed buff because that was a nice final judgment from Moswal, but at the end of the day, NRG are very content with that win because look what's happening on the left. emilitoo almost able to take out a tier 1 of his own.
Now, I'm not sure that if Wowy tried to rotate over to the fight or if he just was backing, but emilitoo gets a lot of pressure and a high axe stun on the Wubbn. So now the tower for Wowy is under a lot of duress.
That red buff on emilitoo, he's level 12 Ullr, stacking up those Devo gloves, and this is the good time to be aggressive. Once you max out the hail of arrows and the blade of arrows, you're really looking to get the poke in as frequently as possible. We haven't really seen Transcendence online for Ullrs or AMCs even, simply because Devo gloves buffs are too impactful here. With the recent buff of the power, you're really looking to get that damage and the sustain.
maniaKK is such a bully over here in this solo lane. No way for Skeeledon and Whalrus to try and contest with him. Level 12 now, meaning he'll be able to go back and get that second relic once he's able to find some time to go to base. In fact, he does go ahead and pick up the thorns now. So if you thought you couldn't kill him before, now you might even just kill yourself, as Skeeledon's got to do a quick pause.
And there's 2 level difference here, like you were talking about, between these solo laners. Whalrus sitting at level 10, he's just been getting abused so frequently here. NRG are executing their strategy the way they really want to. It's more about not necessarily shutting down Whalrus in the solo lane, but more importantly, trying to make sure Skeeledon doesn't pop off on the Serqet, taking away the speed buffs or taking away his life.
Yeah, limiting the impact Skeeledon can have here has been big from him. We've seen that between adapting over there in maniaKK in that jungle solo lane side. I've been also wanting to ask you all game, but it's been a lot of action. We really haven't even had a chance to talk about it. emilitoo and Wowy here, the Ram and the Ullr. A lot of the times people say Ullr is really early game, but how do you compare Ram and Ullr late?
Well, late game, Ram obviously has that huge attack speed boost, trying to just melt the frontline tanks, but Ullr has a decent amount of boxing potential as well. If he ever gets dove in the backline, once he's at level 20, he has a huge amount of lifesteal. As long as he stays in the axe stance form, he's going to be able to just really outbox Skeeledon. However, if he does get hit by the Serqet poisons, he's not going to have that sustain available to him with that 100% healing reduction. So it's a question of who's going to avoid the backline better. And Ram has that advantage, being able to go into the sky with his ultimate.
And you mentioned it, you touched on it a little bit there, Skeeledon. I think him on this Serqet, how well he can respond to the pressure that's clearly being placed on him right now by NRG is going to be a big deciding factor for Noble. Can that Serqet get to the point where it's online and threatening Yammyn and emilitoo in the back?
And Noble, they prioritized this Serqet pick for Skeeledon. They wanted to get him in a comfortable position alongside Whalrus's Osiris. So far, it hasn't been really working out for Noble, but NRG's draft and strategy, they didn't really care what jungle adapting got, considering they picked it after the secondary ban phase. They knew they were still going to pick something aggressive with this first pick of Chulainn and then just lean on that solo lane.
That's exactly right. This Chulainn was one that was prioritized by NRG, and I think we're seeing why. maniaKK clearly comfortable on the Rage Man over here in the solo lane, giving Whalrus a hard time. Now level 13, tied with our 2 hunters for the highest farm in the game, as those are the ones getting a whole lot of solo farm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if maniaKK is trying to build into that mystical mail. Whenever you have a lead in the solo lane, if you're the first one to get that advantage, that's when NRG is going to start looking at 5-on-5 team fighting, starting to go for some gold furies and just really blowing out the lead.
And the 5-on-5 team fighting, it's easier for them now. maniaKK doesn't have to worry as much about his own tower. He can push up the wave that much further and get it going. But actually starting up the Gold Fury is Noble. Wubbn's here, but they end up dropping it because they recognize emilitoo's still on this side of the map.
Skeeledon jumping over. Actually will catch out adapting before the stun. Gonna do the poisons, but he just forces out the beads. Hammer back into tier 1. No kill.
Yammyn going in aggressively. Dropped the Supernova earlier and the Stellar Burst. The knock-up from maniaKK. Not quite enough to finish it off. Moswal used the final judgment here, but it's emilitoo who's looping around the back. Wanting to see if he can maybe clean up Skeeledon. And he got it! Double kill coming out for NRG across the board. Already a 5v3.
Look how sneaky emilitoo is, just being able to wrap behind. I'm sure that call was made, but there's just too many clutters in the communication. The action is just every single angle. And finally, with these 2 kills, NRG are going for the first objective. It's not going to be the Gold Fury. It's going to be actually the Portal Demon, considering where these deaths happen. And it's very important for adapting to prevent Noble from getting a response.
And who started that engagement there, Totally? It was Skeeledon leaping over the wall onto adapting, but the response from Yammyn was immediate. He dropped the Supernova, there was no follow-up, and then he keeps going in aggressive with the Stellar Burst, and they end up being able to clean up not just Skeeledon, but one more.
It was very important for Skeeledon to make an engage, get something going for his team, but the just range wasn't quite there for Moswal. I don't think that he necessarily wanted to commit the final judgment right off the bat. Adapting was able to get away just in the nick of time with that beads. He even caught out adapting before the tectonic rift happened, so it was well-timed and positioned, but Noble not able to capitalize.
All in all, that does mean that NRG now get to enjoy about a 4,000 gold lead to go along with their 4-kill lead about 14 minutes here into the game. So NRG now with that Portal Demon, not too impactful at this point, but more importantly is just that farm that they're able to get. They're the ones controlling the pace. They got a good way to do it too with adapting on this Thor.
And with NRG having the momentum for this first game of the day of group play is so important for them in the future if they were to win this, because like we heard in the interview of Skeeledon, they have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yammyn has to drop the supernova on top of himself in response to the pressure. Up into the air goes Wowy to clean the kill and avoid adapting on the Thor. Drops right back into trouble though. Walls enough to pin down Wubbn, knocking up three members. It was maniaKK. Actually, the last breath poison though could spell some trouble for him, but he's able to make it back out.
Just barely able to absorb some of that damage with that shield from the transformation. emilitoo thinking about maybe potentially starting up the Gold Fury, will start to make that rotation happen. Actually drops the ward and backs on out of there. Pulls the Gold Fury, trying to clear the sentry ward. And with no picks there, it was so clutch that maniaKK just barely escaped death.
Yeah, maniaKK being able to make it out of there was big. And speaking of being able to barely survive, earlier, adapting survived a really good engage, actually, from Skeeledon, and it's because he's going with a bit of a tankier build for him. He's already got that Spirit Robe. It looks like he might be working on the Chulainn, maybe even the Runic Shield there to finish it off, so he wants that survivability.
Every time you get hit by a hard crowd control effect, Spirit's Robe is going to give you about that 10 to 15% damage reduction to be able to just survive the burst. Skeeledon building into Yoden's Wrath, trying to get the cooldowns, because I think his goal here is to maybe force out a lot of purification beads, get his ultimate on a shorter cooldown, and then look for that hard reset.
And that's what we've seen from Skeeledon. Earlier, he jumped in and forced 2 ultimates out from, I think, from adapting in Yammyn earlier, only for his beads. So that's been the game plan for him so far, but it hasn't worked out. 3 levels down on adapting on that Thor, his direct opponent. That's one of the largest actually leads in the game, apart from iRaffer, who's a good ways up ahead of Wubbn.
That's very true, and maniaKK having this 2-level lead over Whalrus is going to be important to see how NRG start grouping up and take advantage of. NRG is one of these teams where they could play from ahead and from behind, but Noble is not necessarily known for their ability to come back into games, and this is going to be the true ultimate test for them. They come into the group play as an initial dark horse. I don't think anyone looking at this game could be like, oh yeah, sure, Noble has this in the bag. You know, 2-time world defending champions? Yeah, why not Noble?
Yeah, I doubt anyone was feeling that way about it, but again, I've been hearing a lot of rumblings that Noble, you know, could be showing up in these group stages, and so this is where they get that first big test, like you were saying. And there are a lot of people worried that NRG in a one-on-one, a set of 1, could struggle, but they came out looking good in this first set. They've got Gold Fury at half health, and they're zoning out Wowy already. He's going to go up into the air, though, to try and contest, and they immediately leash and respond with their own ults.
Adapting in the sky, looking at a juicy target, actually thinking about going back onto Whalrus, but Lord of the Afterlife to escape, and the chase is on.
Look at maniaKK way in the back. Final Judgment comes through, actually does a good bit of damage. iRaffer into the Draconic Corruption, but there's no help for maniaKK or iRaffer. maniaKK's the first one to fall. iRaffer going to have to jump away in the dragon form. Noble actually hold the Gold Fury and find a kill.
Wow, he just baited himself out beautifully there. He got a very early beast, which he didn't want, but more importantly is when he went into the sky, he counted it prematurely because he knew Gold Fury was reset. The longer he was in the sky, the more timing that adapting would have to land on him in the backline. And also a good timing window was Whalrus jumping at the same time that adapting landed.
I also think that the big impact on that was Moswal with that final judgment, though. The reason maniaKK ends up and iRaffer end up kind of alone up front after good zoning is because no one else can afford to walk in. They were too low. They had to back off. So, yeah, a good team fight from Noble Esports. As you said, responding perfectly to NRG and defending that Gold Fury. That's not to say that they've cut this lead, but they did stop it from getting any worse.
They just mitigate the bleeding ever so slightly. Not the damage that Yammyn was looking for. He wasn't able to hit many targets there, considering how impactful Whalrus was zoning every backline from NRG, and this is going to be important now as Noble still stays relevant as we approach near the 20-minute mark.
And look at Whalrus. He's gone with a hide in the main lion. So that's one that's got me thinking he's looking to try and create problems for emilitoo.
That's exactly the point. emilitoo sitting on this Ullr does have fully stacked Devil Gloves, completed this Executioner. He's probably not going to be building into crit considering the Thorns is available and this hide of the main line. It's very important for him to go for either Chin Size here or maybe an early Titan's Bane.
That's what he's going to be going for, that attack speed pen build. Plus, it'll work for him to benefit some of the other damage of his kit. He's actually got pretty hard-hitting abilities, too, so it'll kind of synergize. And he kind of does both really well. I don't think he's bad at ability or at just hitting you with autos.
Especially with iRaffer playing this Fafnir, that coerce, just boosting the attack speed, Shogun's Kusari to boot. He doesn't necessarily even need to rely on too much attack speed. But as I said that, he's now building what looks to be either the Wind Demon or the Poison Star.
Well, there you go. Maybe he is going to be going for a bit of that crit build. emilitoo trying to do what he can to slow down maybe Wowy and Moswal, or Skeeledon if he jumps on him, blow him up right away. But either way, NRG are waiting on a couple key cooldowns to come back. Skeeledon takes good poke in mid.
Good poke onto Skeeledon there. He's going to be questioning about how he wants to engage now with his half health. But touching back onto emilitoo's Poison Star build, this is a defensive option that's not defensive. The idea here is you crit somebody, you slow them down, you make them deal less damage. But the problem is you're going to be taking more damage from the crits every time from the Hide and the Mealine and the Thorns. However, another option could have been Winged Blade, something that Zatman really likes to do.
That's right. We've seen a few more defensive options coming out. We even saw a Mantle of Discord as Wubbn now is the one in trouble, has to drop the Dharma Pillars on himself, and he ends up getting deleted. maniaKK taking credit for that one. Phil up in the air is adapting right now. He's just going to land on the Gold Fury to help clean it up for his team. But don't forget about Wowy.
Wowy's in the sky. He gets off the snipe, hits out maniaKK and emilitoo. Yammyn in the background. They're jumping away as Whalrus. Very low. Final Judgment almost taking out maniaKK. Skeeledon's going to try to get an avenge, though.
It's big that maniaKK's still alive. Skeeledon trying to run away, but he can't. iRaffer is the one that ends up credit for cleaning that one. All 5 members of NRG still here, and they take down the Gold Fury. 3 members of Noble fall, and NRG come out big.
This is the NRG that we've known to see. The 2-time world defending champions not slowing down in this first game.
No.
They're coming out firing. They need the momentum here. Good job by iRaffer, just being really annoying to Moswal.
That fight felt to me like, okay, so y'all think you can defend the Gold Fury? Well, give it another try. And they could not. NRG ended up taking it confidently, and now they've pushed that gold lead out to the point where it's very difficult to fight in. About 7,000 or so in their favor, and they've got their eyes over here on the solo jungle side and that Portal Demon.
NRG were just positioned better than Noble.
Sure.
All 5 members were there. Whalrus was not in position quite yet, still making the rotation happen, and considering how far behind he was earlier on in the game, it doesn't surprise me that NRG was just able to outmaneuver in position against Noble and get this first gold here of the game 20 minutes in.
And you're right, not just with their positioning, but they responded to Wowy going up into the air a little bit cleaner this time, I think. Last time, they all sort of back off, and it's just maniaKK way up in the front all alone. This time, they drop it, get the kill, come right back to it.
And this is the evidence that we see from Skeeledon playing the Serqet of how impactful it is to get ahead as a jungler here. Serqet is too difficult to play from behind sometimes when you're trying to make this momentum play. Switching it up now to go a little bit more defensive with the Gladiator Shield, knowing that he's that bait for Noble. He's going to try to get some more sustain in his kit and maybe survive a little bit more impactfully.
He just gets blown up a little bit too easily now. In too many fights, we've been saying Skeeledon's already half health as the tier 1 tower in mid falls. No real way for Noble to defend that. It actually looks like NRG want to try and get this tier 2. Good wall on the Moswal's got him isolated. Then emilitoo comes in, chunking him, knocked up by maniaKK, and the Dharma Pillars actually help them get the return kill.
So 1-for-1 as maniaKK sacrifices his life, but adapting's not done. He's going to land onto Wubbn. Nice little just going to silence out that Berserker Barrage. The rest of NRG will find Wubbn. It's a 2-for-1 at the end of the day, and they get this tier 2. They're not done yet. They're starting out Whalrus.
Another wall to isolate Whalrus, forces him to use the Lord of the Afterlife to jump on down, and NRG think they can still get this tier, this mid Phoenix as well. Skeeledon was not a part of this one, just trying to split push and get that tier 2, so NRG kind of need this to make it worth.
Wowy in the sky. He connects on the first one, misses the second and third. Yammyn, though, at the same exact time, was taking advantage of that by getting the mid Phoenix 23 minutes in. However, left-hand side, Skeeledon commits to the split push. Had he been there, that would have been probably a turnaround for Noble, but this is the sort of triple beam balance that you're trying to help out your team by getting some more gold in the pocket.
Yeah, and to be fair, Skeeledon hasn't been able to have the impact he's wanted to in those last 2 fights. It just turns out that they have one where there were so many low health bars he could have cleaned up, so I don't fault him too much for the call, but Noble think they can try and force a low energy here at the Fire Giant.
iRaffer with about half health needs to somehow stop this for the moment. It's already at 25%. Yammyn throws out the Stellar Burst. Fire Giant going the way of Noble!
Noble get the Fire Giant, but up into the air goes adapting with the Anvil of Dawn crashing down onto Whalrus, you're gonna need to get out of there, buddy, but there's just no way. Yammyn cleans that one up. Wubbn running for his life, the to keep him alive, but only for the second. Yammyn gets a double kill, and NRG continue to push.
Noble get the fire giant, but at what cost? Wowie's now getting chased by maniaKK here. Skeeledon gonna drop the poisons onto Yammyn, forcing out that Aegis amulet as Moswal dropping some shots as well. But NRG, they're fine with Noble getting the fire giant because the mid Phoenix fell earlier on, and NRG continue to get these objectives.
Noble had to give up way too much there, Anatoly. No way for them to get anything off of that fire giant. It doesn't even slow NRG down. They get 2 big-time kills. They get the tier 2 tower over in right, and as you mentioned, mid Phoenix had already fallen. All the pressure in this game going the way of NRG as they sit up 10,000 gold.
The ball is just in NRG's court. They don't care that Noble got fire giant. Noble will not get anything off of this objective in terms of towers. Maybe tier 1 mid if NRG are caught slipping, but that's not going to be happening anytime soon. NRG are sitting with a commanding almost 10,000 gold lead. They got most of these towers, just need to hit those dual lanes.
And sometimes, even if you take the fire giant and you can't get any towers, it's still okay because that means that the other team can't get it and it slows them down. But totally, I don't think that's going to be the case this time. NRG are up way too much, and Noble have already shown they really can't afford to make a defense. Plus, they got to worry about fire minions in mid.
It's just the composition from NRG that are so good about sieging these towers. Yammyn, Soul, emilitoo, Ullr, iRaffer, Fafnir to boost both of those 2 physical magical hunters. These towers don't really stand a shot unless Noble can get the damage off onto both of those targets, and it's important for Moswal to land his abilities.
And this is what I mean by that pressure. NRG take that tier 1 and left and just continuing to push now down this left lane. Wubbn actually might be in trouble.
Wow.
He's a tanky elephant, but he's at half health. I don't know how he's going to be able to frontline for him now.
He's not that tanky now with that 50% health pool. Yammyn not even going to take any sort of damage because of that Book of the Dead, giving him a little bit of that shield, some self-sustain inside his kid. Noble trying to defend this tier 2 tower.
Noble, good stun comes out on the Whalrus actually with the axe. Skeeledon takes that as his opportunity to jump in. Dharmic Pillars come out in response. That's enough to slow NRG down for the moment, but Noble don't want to hard commit here.
Not yet.
In fact, let's actually go into a listen in here with NRG to see what their calls are thanks to Sennheiser.
I'm in, please.
Is one Fafnir?
Sure.
Careful, Rama's after.
Yeah, I'm fine.
No, yeah, gold.
Free gold. I'm gonna go to portal. Yeah. Don't walk the dangerous way, yeah, bro.
Emil, do you feel the lag though?
What's up?
Do you feel the lag?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like my autos coming out like they're fucking the rain.
It's 36 ping now.
Yeah.
And there we get to see NRG making the call to go for that Gold Fury. They got it cleaned up after taking that tier 2 tower very cleanly as well, Toly.
And it's Noble now trying to stop this portal demon. They're going to be very aggressive considering that iRaffer was a little bit low, getting a little bit of sustain. The Phoenix has respawned for Noble. They want this portal demon, but NRG not letting them have it.
NRG absolutely not. They take that portal demon for themselves. Noble have made this call now twice, Toly. When NRG appear to be backing or having to recuperate after a fight, they try to go take an objective. Let's talk about that fire giant that kind of blew the game wide open. What do you feel about that call?
Those 3 picks, it was a desperation call from Noble, honestly. They were already down about 8 to 10,000 gold, and they needed to get something back into them. So they got it, yes, but the problem was they lost 3 people in response. They lost even more additional towers, and this was after the fact of already losing their middle Phoenix.
And once they lost that, they were able to go take that tier 2 in right as well. But the fight's continuing. Big knockup coming out from maniaKK one more time. Thor's going up into the air, adapting, looking to crash in, but emilitoo has already taken down Wubbn. Skeeledon going on top of the emilitoo, trying to shut down his damage, but he's going to have to run. Meanwhile, on the back end, Yammyn's keeping Whalrus and Wowy and Moswal all busy. Skeeledon's on a merry chase, but I don't know if he can make it out of this one.
Adapting with the speed buff, it elects to kind of stop chasing down Skeeledon. Emil in the axe dance gets so much healing there with those Devo gloves. Yeah. Fire Giant still going to respawn in 30 seconds, but with the respawn Phoenix in the mid, that's where NRG's focus are.
Between Soul and Ullr here, their damage onto these structures is plenty potent. Whalrus now trying to be the front line with Yammyn and iRaffer a little bit low. It is enough to force them off that weakened Phoenix for the time being, but that's only because NRG know the Fire Giant's only 10 seconds from coming back.
They weren't able to get the mid Phoenix, but that's okay. NRG are winning these team fights outside the towers and Phoenixes anyway. This is going to bait Noble in one of these awkward situations where do they just kind of give up this Fire Giant and try to hold off of Moswal's Thoth, or do they try to hard commit here, try to find the picks, and go from there.
And that is going to be the call from NRG, already in position here thanks to iRaffer for this next Fire Giant, but it's Wubbn and Whalrus in the back end who are kind of halfway between. I think they're going to try and judge if they can come in here. If not, they'll just go back and defend. But all three Phoenixes being up does give them a chance here.
A lot of leeway for Noble as Moswal pushes out that wave. Very importantly in the mid lane, the rest of Noble waiting for the regrow from their mid mage. Now NRG, they're starting up the Fire Giants already about half health.
Yeah, it's being shredded between emilitoo and Yammyn, and it looks like the call from Noble is to try and come in and make a steal happen, but NRG just drop it and instead take the fight. In the backline, Skeeledon is sitting on top of emilitoo, trying to keep him low, but up into the air when Wowy looking for the snipes on emilitoo. Skeeledon gets him with the poison. That's one big target that's already down.
Adapting onto Wubbn, but he's forced to retreat away. Wowy's going to chase out iRaffer. He rolls back in. The support from NRG is going to fall. There's 2 dead from NRG and Noble. They're winning this team fight.
This is a huge fight. Good stun coming out from Moswal on the maniaKK. 5 members of Noble still alive. iRaffer and emilitoo have to wait 40 seconds at least on their respawn timers. Now Noble looking to pull the Fire Giant, and no one from NRG in range to contest. A big-time defense coming out from the boys of Noble.
This time, Noble's Fire Giant should net them some towers and some more gold to get back into this game. Noble, they were the dark horse coming into this, but now they're kind of getting back into it. They're going to get some of these towers. 500 from the solo lane, 500 from mid, and about another 1,500 on the right-hand side is going to amount for 2,500 gold to come back in.
That's going to be the call from Tier 2 tower over in the solo side of NRG is going to crumble before the might of Noble Esports. Now, though, iRaffer and emilitoo are back on the map. They'll be there to try and defend when Noble come back in. I don't know, how do you feel about Noble continuing to push here or just use this maybe to stall?
They need to push. They need the gold here. They won that team fight off of the back of Wubbn baiting himself out. Moswal didn't hit the best ultimate in the world. He didn't really have the timing to fully charge it, considering adapting was in the sky. There was fear that that was going to be the primary target, and that was mainly because Yammyn needed to get Moswal out of the fight. He dropped the Stellar Burst and the Supernova really early on, and Moswal absorbed all that damage with the Aegis, walked away cleanly.
And totally, I cannot stress to you how important every single one of these games in the group stages are. All these teams are high level. Being able to get a point up against someone like NRG for Noble would be huge if they can somehow pull this defense off and make a comeback here. All these teams are only going to be playing once in best of ones, and the 2 teams with the best record at the end are the ones who go to HRX.
This is the first international matchup here. I was a little bit worried for Noble because it didn't seem that they were playing their own game. They were trying to play the standard meta, but iRaffer, he jumps in by himself.
iRaffer able to go up into the Dragonic Corruption to get him out of danger for the moment. Dharmic Pillars come down as well as Supernova, but adapting in the backline's huge. Yammyn able to take down Wowy. Whalrus falls, Wubbn falls, double kill comes out for Yammyn on the soul. Just when Noble were showing signs of life, NRG put the boot on the throat.
Okay, never mind. NRG, 2-time world defending champions. Yeah, that's why. Exactly like that. iRaffer baited himself out even better than the way Wubbn did previously. Now with iRaffer still in that dragon form, gets the AoE coerce off. Skeeledon gets blown up.
I'm pretty sure Skeeledon was there a moment ago, but he's no longer. Mid lane, Phoenix has fallen. That was the weakened one from earlier, and even though iRaffer's low, it looks like NRG Esports are gonna go in for the end. Noble, you thought you had it for a moment, but NRG are here to remind you it ain't quite that easy. Let's go ahead and get that point and move on to the next round. NRG Esports coming out over Noble.
You know, the score reads 18-6 for NRG, but that wasn't the cleanest game in the world for them. They could have definitely ironed out a few wrinkles there around the Fire Giant. They pulled the Fire Giant, they got it to about 10% health, 15%, they reset it. Even though Noble were not really in position to steal it though. Granted, Thoth has an insane amount of range. You can never count out that potential steal, but Noble still, despite losing that game, they came out strong and firing on all cylinders. I'm really excited to see them play throughout the rest of the day.
And I think what we saw there was the strength of Fafnir in particular. Going up into the Dragonic Corruption, being out of combat, untargetable, is a big deal. I think it's a big part of why Elevate's triple comp the other day, the triple tank meta was working so much. When you commit onto a Fafnir, he can actually get out of it, and now you're the ones in a tough position.
I was really surprised that, like, iRaffer, you just jumped into, like, the whole team of Noble, but he trusts his own teammates to back him up. If iRaffer dies there anyway, NRG still win that team fight convincingly, and that's exactly what they did. Adapting, getting a huge double stun onto Whalrus and Wubbn. It was 2 easy, clean picks, and they just ran wild after those picks. They had red in their eyes, and they knew that they had the timing to end the game with those long respawn timers.
But if you're a Noble fan at home, you got to be feeling good about that one. No, they didn't get the W there, but they certainly don't look like they're here to roll over to me, Totally. They look like they're here to try and get a spot at HRX.
Every team needs to be looking at that game and be worried about, honestly, both of these teams.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of question marks for NRG of how they would be approaching the group play, because they've never been in this position before where they have to fight their way in desperation mode to get back to World to try to defend their two-time World defending champions. And now with Noble here coming out playing like this is a total different Noble than we've seen on online phase.
Yeah, and that's coming back from they were down to energy in that game, and they make a really strong Fire Giant defense and make their way back into it. So I don't think any of the players here were thinking it, but if at home you thought there were going to be a couple free wins floating around out there in these group stages, well, then you can forget it. There's no free wins being handed out.
And there needs to be more strategies from Noble, I think, than outside of their kind of normal meta game. I thought that Noble was going to come in here with some cheese, but they wanted to fight fire with fire against energy.
And they did look good standing toe-to-toe with them, but let's go ahead and have Aggro and the rest of the desk break it down for us.
It was the result that many of us expected, but maybe not as easy as we may have thought. NRG end up beating Noble, but it wasn't as easy as it may have seemed. I'm Aggro, joined by a couple of supports from North America. Polar Bear Mike from E United and Jeff Hinla from Luminosity. You two facing off on Sunday, by the way. You guys excited for that?
Yeah, I hate this guy. Why am I here with him?
Yeah, there's actually an invisible wall between them because they kept fighting so much during that game. Speaking of fighting during that game, guys, Noble gets off to a decent start, and then NRG starts to look like energy, and, I'm going to get food. I'm like, all right, we're good. NRG's just going to roll.
Noble Classic, baby.
And then it looks like it is going to be the 50-minute Noble Classic. What happened there that allowed Noble to come back in that game?
I think they just tried to do a risky fire call. Like, they just rushed it when NRG was backing off of the mid Phoenix, and they just got to stall the game.
And how tough is that, Jeff, to kind of reset after you are in the lead for the game? You feel like you've got it on lock, and then you lose a Fire Giant like that, and you're like, we might not be winning now.
So momentum just kind of stops, right? And like you have to look at the goal lead, and it's just like, do we chill? Do we push? Are we still big enough? Like, even though they have fire, and a lot of times the answer is yes. Like, okay, they have fire, but we can still fight into the fire.
Even the first Fire Giant, as we just saw, Noble actually ended up sealing away. Now they lost a couple members for this one, and that was kind of the idea for Noble, was sacrificing Whalrus, sacrificing Wubbn, and allowing the backline to do what they could. And even during the early game, Mike, a lot of the strategy for Noble was just let Whalrus alone on the island, but I'm not sure you can really do that against a team like NRG.
They actually had a chance to get ahead in the early game. I think they got first blood. They ended up trading 1-for-1 in that engagement. I think there was another one where they traded 1-for-1. I think the game kind of busted open a little bit where Whalrus was soloing his blue buff. Adapting comes over, they two-man dive him, and he dies.
Right, and that's just one of those situations where the strategy is to get Moswal ahead there, Jeff, but by leaving your solo laner on an island against maniaKK and adapting, it's going to be a tough matchup.
I mean, that always happens when you leave one side of the map to just... You can do this on your own, right? You got that blue buff, and they call yes, and then two people invade you. It's rough.
And Skeeledon in particular had some trouble in this one, and as kind of demonstrated by that graphic there, it wasn't all NRG getting those buffs, but a lot of those buffs were going to NRG in the early game, and that's when the first few respawns are so important.
I think even a couple of the first speed buffs, Noble actually defended it. I believe Whalrus stole it a couple times, stole it or whatever, but they actually were dying there. I think Yammyn was able to make a much bigger impact early game on those buff fights on the soul than Moswal was on Thoth.
So the takeaway here, NRG wins. That's the expected result. But if you're another team playing up against Noble, there's some things that you have to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. You saw them take fights, take good fights. You saw them they're making plays even when they're behind. And it's hard going into a team that will do that. It's hard. It's like, okay, they're not going to roll over once we get a lead. They're just going to fight into us, and you always have to think about that.
Is it possible to get momentum from a loss?
I don't think so. I mean, they can maybe feel more comfortable because the land nerves are gone probably, but I don't think you're confident like, oh yeah, we're going to stomp everyone else now. Like,
really? We just lost the energy, and now we got them right where we want them.
I'm not sure if that's true, though. Because, all right, so if you're fighting from behind and you're making plays and you're doing the right things, right, and you can be like, okay, we had a bad start. Like,
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
But we were winning and fighting in team fights, X amount down. Like, we can do this. We got this next time.
And that's against NRG of all teams as
Right,
well.
It's one of the favorites for sure in this group play.
Exactly. So Noble doesn't come out with the victory, but a moral victory, if there is such a thing, at least at this stage. And now.